welcome back to The Watch. And guys, AAA games. It's over. They're done. Their grave is in.
For an important reason. I'm also noticing I look like I've literally shrunk because I'm sitting further back. But anyway, that's just a fun perspective thing. I'm not shrinking. I'm normal
that we
size.
know of.
I'm normal size. All right, so we kind of discussed this a week or so ago, right? Where people were saying, you know, gaming, or was it AAA gaming is dead? And at first I was thinking, that's not the case. Gaming is more successful than ever. But now I actually understand more of the nuance as to where this sentiment is coming from. And they really have a point for a big, big reason. I want to discuss this with you guys, okay? And it's not to say all AAA gaming, but there is a business model existing in gaming which is force them into kind of a death spiral, because there has been some pretty big failures in gaming recently. Well, can you name a couple?
Suicide Squad comes to mind.
Yeah, that destroyed the company.
Yeah. Saints Row.
Saints Row.
Funny you mention that. I was actually at my game store the other day, and I went to the pre-owned section, and it's all Saints Row.
Funny you should mention that, because every time we go to different collectible stores, all the Star Wars toys are on sale for $2.
All the sequel stuff, like
Yeah.
all the. It's funny, all the prequel original trilogy, not there.
Oh,
but
yeah.
yeah, you know, the pre-owned bin. There's just lots of Saints
look
Row
at that.
games. It's just mwah, beautiful, beautiful.
Now, were there any more? Like, there was a couple that I'm having trouble recalling. They're just, you know, games that have failed. Oh, Forspoken. Whoa, that was a big
That
one.
was a doozy. Yeah.
And
I didn't hear much about Fable. I heard much.
Well, it's not out yet.
It's not out yet?
No.
that's why I haven't heard much about it.
Well, that's what I mean. I remember we heard a big thing about
They
it. Big fuss when
announced it. They did the
announced it.
CGI thing and stuff, and then
That was it. Yeah.
Now, there has been some huge successes from AAA, and that's, well, Elden Ring was massively successful. Hogwarts Legacy was hugely successful. It's funny, like, I would consider Larian AAA now, with Baldur's Gate 3.
Yes. Yeah.
But they're independent, so Larian is an interesting...
Okay, I'll put it this way. Yes, you're independent, but all your buddy buddies, and with the Game Awards and the big publishers, you're basically AAA anyways, because you're connections.
Yeah. So, like, is it actually dying? It's in relation to the business structure of AAA at the moment, and this was talked about by Grums, who is on Twitter, and I don't even know his real name.
I've forgotten it.
I've forgotten it, but he used to work for Blizzard, big game dev, and he actually was talking about this on Podcast with a Quartering, and he said something that I think needs more like exposure. That it was mentioned. We're doing this dedicated video to talk about it because he talks about the current business model with AAA. And one of the huge problems with AAA is how insanely expensive these large games are. Like, some of the budgets on them, what are they? Like hundreds of millions of dollars, aren't they? Like, huge. The budget for Suicide Squad is so big that they've lost so much money on it that the game company is going to go under. Have they gone under already? Or
No, not yet.
But it's looking bad for them.
Yeah. Well, they've also said now they're going to double down on live service games and free-to-play and everything else, because, you know, this game didn't sell well, even though it's a live service game. You know, probably going to go free-to-play eventually.
Now, the reason why the games cost so much is because they have such large teams, which each person obviously has like a salary for multiple years. So, like, you can see why these numbers start to run up so high.
There's also heaps of unnecessary bloat.
That is true.
Huge unnecessary bloat. And also, there is such lack of direction that they end up, and it's part of the bloat problem, but they end up wasting time developing these assets and everything that then get cut, thrown out, and they have to start again.
It's a lot of waste.
Like, what was the developer for Dragon Age? Wasn't it BioWare? Mm-hmm. Reports came out of just how insanely unfocused the development of some games were. And Dragon Age Inquisition, I heard a comment that the fact that that game was successful was one of the worst things that could have happened for the development team or anything like that, because the way that game was made was so bad, so undirected and so chaotic and everything like that, that it meant that they'll keep making games like that. And they did, and they've been failing since, because it was a fluke that game was successful and ended up being all right, because it was just a complete crap show with how it was being made.
Well, I know with Halo as well, the most recent one, the majority of that game was made through contractors. So you would pick up the game for 2 months, 6 months, and every time you hire someone new, they have to relearn everything, and you forget things that were made previously. Like, so much waste in AAA these days.
I'm not 100% sure on this, but I'm pretty sure that when Cyberpunk 2077 came out, there was an issue with that as well, where everybody was kind of on different pages, everybody was kind of working on their own thing. There was no strong leadership to actually helm where the game should be, where people should be at, and then when it released in such a terrible state, they had to, basically the company came out with like, our bad, which is very rare for this sort of thing.
And so there is crazy inefficiency with how a lot of big games are being made. And then you mentioned that there's all this outsourcing where there are crews of people working on something completely disconnected that might not know exactly how things are going to be supposed to be fitting in and all that stuff. And so making these huge AAA titles has become ridiculously expensive in the mainstream. Crazy so. And this is where they run into problems. So to produce these games, the game studios cannot front up the money to make them themselves. They barely even have the cash flow, and it's really rare that a company can do that. Larian is one of the few companies that are able to make such a big game that didn't need huge amounts of investment capital to do it. And so producing these huge games have become similar to how film needs to be financed to produce these huge films, where the budgets go up to 200 million, sometimes like... Was it $1 billion? Wasn't Avatar like $1 billion? It was crazy amounts of money.
Well, that's for a few movies, but even getting that funding, getting $1 billion for a movie franchise is insane.
Is bonkers. And so it has created this environment where these large game studios then need cash to produce the next title, and they go after what they see as easy money. The easy money that will invest in everything like that. And this is where we come into ESG. ESG has been such a poisonous cancer that has been ruining the game industry because it's investment money, okay, that's available, and a lot of gaming companies have actually actively gone after it, right, because it's available and they need the money. And so Grums was saying they're just after easy money to fund their games. ESG is available, but to get access to those ESG investment money capital, they say you need to tick these boxes. You need to have these types of representations, and by forcing game companies to do that, and I think it seems like a lot of these large studios aren't even really aware of what that actually means. No. They seem so disconnected from what's happening in the gaming community and also in society, and this how much people despise woke culture, that they think, oh yeah, representation is good, we'll do that, and so they just get on board, because this is one of the things that came out with the Saints Row disaster. Some of the people who worked involved have spoken out. Short Fat Otaku, Dev, has got a video where he talks about how his interaction with it, and revealed that a lot of the like higher ups in these companies had no idea that, and they were like, oh, this will help improve the game. People like it more. They like this woke messaging and stuff, and they're that disconnected that they okay, then this will just make the game better. And it's like, they have people making games who do not know what makes games good. Which is
corporate world, everyone. That's how it works.
Well, I was going to say, because you brought up Hollywood and movies as well, that I feel like the solution to both of these problems is an interesting one, because it's the same one. It's passion. If someone is passionate about a project, it doesn't matter what the project is, whether somebody likes it or not, due to personal taste or whatever, but they'll put the effort in. They'll go that extra mile. Like games made back in the 90s, you had a small dev team working a year round, and it was their passion. It wasn't about the money then. It wasn't about, corporate or anything like that. It was about someone who was passionate about a project. And it's the same thing with like movies. You had George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, who would resort to these things. They would take risks, and they would go, well, I care about this. I want this to be good. And they pioneered, in a lot of cases, technology, because that's how so much they cared about these sorts of things. These days, people was like, well, I can get paid to do this.
It's just a tick box. They think making or creating things is a formula that they can, and then they want to corporatize it and inject, well, we need to have these type of product placements in it, and we need to be able to sell these types of toys or products or whatever. And so they start constructing film stories and everything completely around this money-making mindset, which will more often ruin the product.
Well, they sometimes even do it from the foundational sense, where it's like, okay, we want this to be a live service. Right there, you have a problem.
Exactly.
Especially when it's supposed to be like a single
Constructing
player.
games around just things that make money is a recipe to make a dog crap game. Okay, but guess what? If you're relying on investors, okay, to make a game, what do investors want? Do you think they're giving away money for free?
They want more money.
They want a return. And so they'll say, all right, if I'm investing my money, you need to make sure this thing is going to make money. And so you need to make sure you monetize it in this way, live service it, DLC, and look at where it pushes to. Okay? And so games being made in this model inherently leads to crap games where you don't have a creative head, that building something out of passion, that is just this soulless cash grab that then is being forced on by an investor. Because one of the easiest investors that are being available in recent times is the ESG money, BlackRock. BlackRock is one of the richest investment firms in the world. Trillions of dollars.
Does Baldur's Gate have any live service features, or is it a purely offline single-player sort of game?
I don't know how, I mean, their launcher goes up before you play the game, but there was no like online store or any online features.
Because I was just thinking about some of the biggest games in the world from the last couple of years. We've had like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, that's an offline single-player game, God of War, Elden Ring, Hogwarts Legacy. Is there anything I'm missing?
Baldur's Gate.
And Baldur's Gate was the newest one, yeah. Like we've had Spider-Man, we've had a whole bunch of games that are all single players, offline games, and they're all the biggest things in the world at the moment. So that's why this Suicide Squad thing was such a... Everybody said, like, we don't want a live service game. We don't want a game that has to be connected to the internet and have to have your DRM and is less, like, anti-consumer. We don't want these things. And I think the numbers are very, very starkly reflecting that at this point.
Which is why it's bonkers. Was it Warner Brothers that said their future games are going to be live service and stuff like that? If you just look at the successful games of recent memory...
Hogwarts Legacy was the best-selling game last year. And it was a Warner Brothers game as well. It was like... All right, so you want to go with the game that lost you all the...
They have retards making these decisions that are like, it's such obvious, like, have a look at just the track record to figure out what's working. They're not even doing that.
I think they're very simple-minded because then you look at Helldivers and they go, multiplayer online. That's what we've got to be.
Popular.
Even though you've got, made money from other things instead. And the other thing that annoys me with this is, like, Warner Brothers has what? They have Lord of the Rings IP. They have DC IP. They have so... You could do so many good things.
Harry Potter.
Give it to a bunch of AA devs who'll do something cool with it. Instead, you're going to make a live service crappy game no one's going to play.
I know. And you touched on something that's important. That this is, and we're going to talk about that a bit more. That this is going to be the rise of AA gaming. But going back onto the fall of AAA gaming right now, right? So this is the model that exists, right? And then if you're relying on investment capital to make games, the focus is going to be on making money as a game model, and the people investing have a lot of sway in telling people how to make, and they're not creative people, they don't know what makes good games, and because BlackRock is such an insane cancer on society, they also say, you need to make sure that you force the right change. One of the head guys at BlackRock said, we need to force change. They want to re-engineer society, and if it's not going in the way they want, they will force it, and this is one of the big ways that they've been forcing it, by saying, if you want our investment money, and there are industries now that are reliant on it, you will totally put our progressive message in it. Okay, and so because games, this is the structure of AAA gaming at the moment. The insane bloat, the insane expenses, relying on investment money. This is what Grum's described as the death spiral of AAA gaming, because they can't break out of this. They don't know how to make cheaper, more slim games. They have people at the heads of the company that don't even know what to make good games. And not only that, this cancerous kind of influence of the woke propaganda, right, isn't just coming from the ESG BlackRock investment, right? The people in these companies are also on board. Yeah, they get the consultant groups like Sweet Baby Inc. To come in and help them out, but you think there aren't lead writers and stuff that are also on board with this message, okay? And so it's an infection that is now almost pandemic, and the almost inevitable result, because it would take large changes to course correct this. It's not going to happen. They would have to clean house, get rid of a lot of unnecessary, fat, and I think a lot of some of that unnecessary fat, in some, but a lot of the unnecessary fat are the people in human resources that are hiring everyone and won't fire people.
That's fair. But like gaming companies have been firing people left and right lately, yeah?
Yes, but the funny thing is, which I was talking about, it's like, okay, they're going to fire everyone who's working on the game and then hire people who've never used AI before to make AI games and then make money.
And the people
not a
doing the
good
hiring and firing are usually the worst ones. They're the human resource people that are
All the
completely
CEOs who just
Yes.
are disconnected from the thing.
Yeah.
Like that's the irony here. It's like, oh, we need to make games, but you're going to fire everyone who makes the games.
Yeah, and by the way, it's not just the product that has to tick the ESG boxes. Companies have to do as well. It's like, we will only invest in companies if you have X representation on your board and things like that. And so...
And that's a double-edged sword, because when you hire people who don't actually work on making the game, they work on the community statements. You have community managers that say stuff. You have the writers who are making sure you got the correct wording for stuff. Like,
And this is why...
you can't win.
Yeah, this is why even one overt woke kind of bit of propaganda or messaging in a game, right? Gamers are now rejecting it wholesale because it is a sign of a very pervasive, deeply ingrained cancer that is just not only ruining games, ruining society, right? People are not on board with this woke crap. And so when you see gamers reject a game entirely because it is pushing some type, like they see one kind of flag in there that is pushing woke propaganda or something like that, people think it's so unreasonable to just reject a game for this one little, it's because it's gotten way too far. People are now sick of it, and it's a sign of how ingrained it is. It's a red flag that this entire company has gone down this tube, and they're probably relying on, woke investment, ESG money, and other things like that. And so it seems like even trying to ignore this woke crap in an otherwise good game, right, perpetuates a terrible cycle that is leading to terrible games. And so gamers are starting to reject it flat, which I think is brilliant, because that's the only way to fix it. You need to send a message to say, if you think, that you have to be afraid of the woke cancel mob, it's like, no, you need to be afraid of your customers more than anyone else. You think you can get away with, the only way that you'll survive is by investing in this, woke investment capital that you have to tick boxes for it and things like that. No. If you want, and that's the only way you'll make a successful game, you need to please your customer. And doing this stuff, relying on this crap investment, woke propaganda and all that stuff, is a way to not only ruin your game, destroy your company. You think getting that money investment will help a company? No, that is going to be one of the things that will lead to the destruction of your company, as we've seen with, people who made Saints Row, the people who made Forspoken, and now Suicide Squad. That's the message that is being sent, and it is brilliant. But it doesn't seem like AAA gaming could course correct this ship. We see how successful gaming is, and it is hugely successful, but for AAA game companies that are in this production method, it is a disaster. Because people are rejecting it. These games are failing, and then they have all how can a company fail if they make a game that doesn't do well? Well, not only do they have to recoup the costs of production, they have to make profit to pay off all these investments. They're not getting anything. So the investment's saying, we want our money back. It's like, what can they do apart from sell assets and go bankrupt?
Yep.
It's complete death on that company. And so the current AAA method of making games is in a death spiral, as Grum's described. And if this is what they're doing, right, if they get what they deserve. And the silver lining to this, right, is that this will not be the death of gaming in any measure. It'll be the death of the crap AAA useless production model, and a new, area of game development will rise and flourish, as it's already been doing.
Okay. So I'm going to say something here, Nathan. Jump in at any time when I get something wrong. Yes, AAA gaming is failing, but that is also having knock-on effects for the industry and investment for AA and single A games. So there's less investment, so there's less jobs overall. So meaning, studios are closing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So AAA failing is actually you want it to fail for the reasons that you don't like, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, this is also putting the rest of the gaming industry in a difficult predicament.
But it won't die.
Gaming will never die.
There'll be
It's just
and by the way, getting a $2 to $10 million investment seems a lot easier than trying to get $100 million investment.
Yes, but the problem is when the investments don't pay off for the larger games, then people are less likely to make any investments in the industry, which becomes another problem.
But you know what I think would happen? It seems like you want to say something about others.
Yeah.
I think what we'll see is successes like Larian Studio. Game companies that build within their budget, that what they have, they'll still get some investment in there, but then they build, one game was successful, then they can invest their own money to make a bigger game and build up like that. But
making games is hard. And most of the time you need investment. Right now, going around the world, there is no investment in games. Period.
I say good. Look, you know why?
Nathan is a game developer.
I know.
Shad is not a game developer.
I'm sorry if I've said, but the reason why, I think it's so much better for game companies to rely on their own assets and abilities.
But you can't start one without investment.
But I see some really promising games that are being made by 2 people.
Yes.
And then they can make good stuff, and then that builds from success.
Yes.
And then
those are some people. Other people need more teams. Other people need more time.
Let's use Nathan as an example. Nathan, you have a full-time job.
Yes.
How often do you work on your game?
Maybe 5 hours a week.
A week. And how long have you been working on it for now?
3 years.
3 years. This is the problem. If there's no investment, then there's nobody able to make the games to begin with. Because you can't just do it in your own time. It takes too long, and then if it doesn't work out, you've just wasted 3 years.
A lot of games, every game needs research and development and investment, because if you're making the same game you made from before, then you're not making a new game and investors don't like it.
I think gaming is such a large audience, and there's so many people that want good games that even investment dries up, there will always be a way found to make those good games. Like crowdfunding and stuff like that might be an option in the future, where you can get investment from the audience, the people that want the stuff. I know there's been big failures with crowdfunding.
Yes.
Yeah.
My biggest issue is the fact that, so in 2008, when there was the financial situation, the games industry in Australia completely collapsed. Nothing survived. And so since then we've been building up, and I think last year was the first year everyone was kind of hopeful that the industry would grow, that there'd be local jobs, that people could make games that were local, like we've had successes with things like Untitled Goose Game and all this other sort of stuff. And then this past year, literally everything is crumbling to the point where it's like, okay, maybe next year I can't even go see other devs because there won't be any devs around, and therefore you don't have a community to actually grow and make games. There's still stuff online, but if it's struggling here, it's probably going to struggle in the US as well.
Yeah.
So...
But the fact that gaming as an industry and the audience of people who play games, that's just growing. Because gaming over the board isn't dying. It's getting bigger and bigger. Doesn't that give you some encouragement?
Sure, I know eventually I'm going to make a game and it's going to be good, and I'm going to no matter what, I'm going to make games. But as an industry, because gaming is growing, doesn't always mean that games are growing. You're still going to have people who just play Valorant, or who just play Dota, or who just play CSGO, or who just play PlayStation games. It's going to be bigger for the big guys, because when people just type in gaming, you're going to get all the big IPs. It's the middle ground stuff that you're not going to get as much.
So the way to then fix AAA gaming, because there'll always be someone who'll rise to AAA status, right, and make big games and things, is a model that doesn't rely on investment capital. Stop spending so much bloat, make it on a slimmer thing, and because incredible games can be made for $10 million, right? Isn't that?
It's a lot of money, Shad.
But hang on, these companies can fund $10 million on their own.
Yes, they
They're
can.
needing to get $100 million for these stupid, over-bloated, woke crap games that then ruin their company.
Smaller companies cannot fund $10 million.
Yes,
it's only the giant mega corporations.
But if you are relying on AAA gaming, there's a way that AAA gaming could survive, save themselves, but it'll take too much culling of the chaff. And
the thing is, all these AAA games, not all of them, but a lot of them have diverse portfolios, and it's not just gaming. PlayStation, they have consoles. Warner Brothers has movies and stuff like that. A lot of these AAA games, AAA companies have other things, so that gaming doesn't really matter too much. So it's not that big of a deal when we're talking specifically game studios. If that game fails, the studio fails.
And then you lose that. For example, with Bethesda, the game, the people who made Skyrim are no longer there at Bethesda.
But aren't they going off to try and make their own game studios? I know the people who worked on Morrowind or something like that, are trying to make their own Skyrim-like game. All power to them. Probably are running into money issues. But the thing is, though, we do see huge success with AA games. Look at Palworld. Look at Helldivers, right? Where you have a group of passionate people make something awesome. The game is hugely successful, and look at the budget they could have for their next game.
Yes.
They don't like. That's the model that I think you should have.
The issue with making games in general is that it's time, money, skill, and a bit of luck that the right people see the right thing, the algorithm picks you up. Like, there's
Not only that,
so
just
much.
like if the streamers pick up on you and like it
If
becomes
they
a
don't,
cultural
if
thing.
Steam bans you or
Yeah.
not, if there's so many things that can change, and just financially, stability is like one part of the pie, and if that's taken out, that's like a foundational thing.
Well, yeah, I can see some pros and cons, but you raise some good points. I think I still am on the side of like, hey, if AAA gaming is going to die,
I'll put it this way.
good.
It's like Hollywood right now. They had a writer's strike. How many movies have come out this year we've actually watched?
But I'm happy about that.
I know you're happy about that, Shad, but there's also nothing to watch, even just casually as a viewer.
Really, there's so much old stuff that I'm
No.
loving.
At the cinema.
At the cinema, I don't care about going to the cinema.
I do. And all there is Dune. I've seen Dune now, so I've seen every movie. The thing that's going to happen, but people are going to say, there's no good games coming out for the past year, 2, 3, 4. What's up with that? It's like, well, there's no money to invest in new games. So play your old games instead, but people always want new stuff too.
Kind of, but the thing is, though, like, I think you always find good new games. Like, but people need to
Elden Ring DLC is coming out this year.
just
So, yeah.
people need to broaden it. Like one of the messages that came up is like, look, there's some really good stuff coming out of Asia. Dragon's Dogma 2, baby! Can't wait! But anyway, that is more AAA, But no,
Let's keep mentioning AAA. Elden Ring. Don't
but like, this wasn't Grums. This was Cabrutus. He was on the same live stream. He mentions like, and actually also Raging Golden Eagle. He was speaking with Arch about this. That there are some great games coming out of Asia that that are fun, and they're AA type kind of titles that people don't need to lock themselves in a box of like only AAA gaming. There's heaps. Go to Steam. There is bonkers amounts of games on there, more than I could ever even consider trying. And so I think people want games. There'll always be games, and I hope that this will either cause the bad apples in AAA gaming to die completely and push up the rise of AA. That's my hope. That's AA gaming. Let that rise.
A delusional hope. But anyway, should we end
It's not
now?
delusional.
Yeah,
It'll
it is.
happen.
I think we're past that point, to be honest.
Guys, what do you think? Let us know in the comments. I'm interested to see. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay on watch.